Hi everyone. Today we're going to be talking about Chapter 13, which is routines, environments, and opportunities. And just like everything in this class, it's day to day, the relationship way. We've learned all about relationships, right? So, the learning outcomes for this chapter are that you will be able to explain how to provide responsive transitions and routines for infants and toddlers and their families, how to create a responsive relationship-based environment, including quality learning spaces, equipment, toys, and materials. Explain how to provide a variety of learning opportunities, and then describe various curriculum approaches. So the book talks about transitions and routines as really a time to build important relationships. So when we think about the curriculum for infants and toddlers, so much of what we do is built around these transitions and routines. So saying hello and goodbye, diapering, feeding, putting kids to bed. It really makes up a lot of the day when you're taking care of infants and toddlers. And when I was thinking about this slide and the transition of entering a new childcare and learning program, I was thinking about something that I had read back in 1999. And it was a story about a little guy transitioning into a child care center. And I said, oh my goodness, how am I going to find this resource from 1999? And actually, I went to the book then, and it's the same story about a little boy named Tim. So I want you to close your eyes for a minute, and I'm just going to read to you a short little story about a toddler named Tim. So Tim stood just inside the entrance to the big playroom. He was sturdy for 2.5 years, but short. The noise was jarring, and he looked around for the woman his mother talked to when they came in. She had said to his mother, "He'll be fine, I'll get him started," and she had taken his hand. But now, just as fast, she was gone. It scared him as much as the other time. This was not a good place to be. He wanted his mother, and he wanted to go home. A boy running past him bumped him hard, and Tim nearly fell, but he caught himself and made his way to the corner of the room. He still couldn't see that big person or the other one, just lots and lots of small kids. He sat down and fingered some colored blocks on the floor. A big boy came and grabbed one and stepped on Tim's hand. Tim yelped and cried and looked around. He held his hurt hand in the other, and the tears ran down his cheeks. No one saw. Heartbreaking, right? And I love this vignette because it just puts you in the experience of Tim. So it's really important to understand that infants and toddlers thrive when they feel safe, when they have a routine. Routines make them feel safe, and that we really need to support infants and toddlers through these routines because it's a very, very big part of their day. So when we think about transitions during the day, how can teachers be responsive and build relationships? During greeting and goodbye, what could this teacher maybe have done to support Tim a little bit more? Maybe she could have noticed that he was feeling unsure, that he wasn't safe. Maybe she could have brought him over to a group activity, got him set up playing, and then moved along. How do we build relationships during infant feeding and toddler eating, during diapering and toilet learning, during sleeping? There's a great table on 13.1, table 13.1 of your book, that gives a lot of great concrete examples of how you can do these things. And I always remember, I've talked about the program for infant and toddler care. We're going to be looking at some videos from them later on. But I always remember when I went to a training for PITC. And if you look at this picture on the slide, they had us do an activity where you were paired with somebody else, and one person had a little cup of food and a spoon, and the other person had nothing. The other person didn't know what was going on, and the person with the cup and the spoon was told to just start feeding the other person. So not to say anything, but to kind of just get this spoon, get the food, and start shoving food into the other person's mouth. And you can imagine how you would feel if you all of a sudden had this stranger that you didn't know shoving food in your mouth. Same thing for infants and toddlers. So how can we make this pleasant, safe, a time where relationships can really be built? And we do that by observing the baby's cues, by saying, "Okay, Julio, I'm going to feed you some food now," and just talking through it. And really, these routines are amazing times to build relationships because you're kind of one-on-one with the child, right? So my son will tell me about, his little routine when he changes Michael's diaper. Every day they do the same thing. And it really is just a special time. And I don't think we always think about routines as a special time, but it really is a time in childcare or, with your own child where you just get this one-on-one time with the child. So what are the benefits of creating responsive relationship-based environments? These environments support children's individual and social development. They encourage exploration, focused play, cooperation, and they provide choices for children and support self-directed learning. We're going to watch a video that talks a little bit about this. So when we think about responsive spaces, the walls and learning areas are uncluttered and provide opportunities for learning. We want to have things in the room that are there for the kids, not for the teachers, if that makes sense. Teachers do need their own materials, their own supplies, their own spaces, but when you're thinking about the room, think about how does this contribute to children's learning? The environment meets our need to gather, be comforted, rest, and explore, so that there are these different spaces throughout the classroom where children can do all of these things. Supports the teacher-child relationship. So maybe there's a comfy couch where everybody can kind of cuddle up and read a book. Minimizes management and custodial activities, allowing teachers more time for interactions, observation, and the facilitation of children's development. So when I used to plan infant-toddler spaces, you would want to make sure that the diapers were close to the diaper changing table. If the diaper changing table is here and you have to walk all the way across the classroom to get the diapers, that's taking away important time. So making sure that the environment is set up with these routines in mind, right? That the teacher has everything accessible to get her job done. So what do we want to look for? We want to make sure that environments are clean, they're safe, they're properly lighted, they're ventilated, which is very important with diapers, and provide appropriate temperature regulation, that there are design elements to reduce stimulation, create a sense of calm, and enable children to focus on each other, their teachers, the materials they're exploring. You want to have child-sized furniture and equipment, comfortable spaces that are inviting to children. When you design your environment, you always want to look at it through the child's eyes. And I'm going to show some videos of some really great environments so y'all can see really what it looks like. The indoor and outdoor environment should provide a rich variety of activity choices. If you only have one truck, there's going to be fighting because everybody's going to want to play with that truck, right? There's the materials, there's toys that respond to children's varying levels of development. So you might want to have puzzles that are simple, that might just have a knob, and then you might want to have puzzles that are a little bit more complex. And then, like I mentioned, you really want to think about spaces that support adults to interact, supervise, and observe children. There needs to be a good flow. There absolutely should be no place where teachers can't visually supervise the children. That's a big thing for licensing. I used to spend a lot of my time thinking about visual supervision. So this is really a quote that reflects the Reggio Emilia approach. I'm going to show you videos of the Children's Center at San Diego State that really reflects this approach. And think about this. So no space is marginal, no corner is unimportant, and each space needs to be alive, flexible, and open to change. So really looking at every space in the classroom and thinking, does this reflect what I want for the children? Does this reflect the beauty of the children? Does this reflect the wonder of the children? How can children use this space that really allows them to be alive, flexible, right? And can it be manipulated? Because kids are always all about, touching and experimenting, and they're curious. So the space should really reflect that as well. In your text, figures 13.1 and 13.2 offer sample floor plans. And I'm just going to say that these are kind of a dream. And so many times in my career, I was told, okay, we have to move this center, go out and find a space. So I would be looking in church basements. I have seen 7-Eleven stores that have been turned into infant toddler centers. Yeah, I've seen some crazy centers because a lot of times you can't just build a new center, you have to take existing space. So I just wanted to mention that because that was always kind of not a challenge, it was a challenge, a fun challenge. And then also table 13.2 talks about creating responsive spaces inside the classroom. So what would you want in each of these spaces? I want you to think, and I'm actually going to, for your activity this week, I'm going to have you, I have a video of the Children's Center at San Diego State, and I want you to really pay attention to how they have set up their areas. So what would you want in a quiet space? Maybe some pillows, maybe some books, maybe a fish tank, maybe a fountain, special places for nurturing children. So a couch, a rocking chair, spaces for delighting the senses. So maybe, what do you do with a window? What do you do with the natural light that comes in from a window? What can you do there? A space to use materials to create. Again, thinking about kind of the utility of the space. If you're going to get messy, what do you need around? A sink. A space for peekaboo and other social games. So we've talked about how kids love peekaboo, big part of object permanence and beginning of math. Kids need to be active. They need to climb. There's a lot of great materials that allow children to climb, because if you don't provide them with materials to climb, they're going to do it anyway, and they're going to climb on the tables, they're going to climb on the chairs. So you want to make sure that you give them lots of space and materials to be active. And then a space for toys and other manipulatives. You also want a space to build and construct, a space for dramatic play. And I think it's important to remember that these spaces are going to change, right? I remember, when you have the arm babies, you don't need a space to climb. The babies aren't climbing. I used to love the way the early Head Start centers that I worked would they just transform over the course of the year. I remember walking in one time and the teachers had started dramatic play because the kids were ready for it. And the kids were so excited to be talking on the phone and cooking and playing with the babies. But you're not going to do that when you have 12-month-olds. You need a space for reading to children and for children to love books. You need feeding and eating spaces, sleeping, diapering, and toileting spaces. Again, when I was in charge of early Head Start, figuring out the sleeping, diapering, and toileting can be really challenging because you need to have a teacher there observing the napping babies. You need to have a water source. It just so many things. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm a plumber. I didn't even realize that I needed to know so much about plumbing when you care for infants and toddlers. And then also outdoor spaces where the kids can get some fresh air, they can run. It's good sometimes when the indoor space opens up into the outdoor space. And I'm excited to show you all the video of the Children's Center that I'm going to do. So this is a video from PITC, which I talk about all the time, called Spaces to Grow. And let me pull it up for you. I got a new computer that I'm not really used to yet, so luckily I can edit this video. Okay, so I like to show you PITC because hopefully you will refer to it. It's amazing. But we are going to watch this video called Spaces to Grow.
Infants do a lot of learning about who they are and what they like by choosing. So environment should allow for plenty of choices.
The ability to choose is a fundamental part of an appropriate child development program. So we may make, through the design of the space, 6 or 7 or 10 choices in terms of what children can do, going to read a book or stack cardboard blocks or put on a hat in front of a mirror. But the child needs to decide which one of those things he wants to do and how much time he wants to spend at it.
From this point of view, it's the child's interest that takes precedence. Environments that offer different choices in different areas of the room allow children to follow their own schedule, not a pre-assigned schedule where all children are expected to do the same thing at the same time.
People say, I want to see your schedule, because they want to know what your structure is. And so at 10 o'clock, everybody does something for 20 minutes, and then at 10:20, you do something else. What I think is that infant toddler programs should be very structured, but they should be spatially structured rather than temporally structured. So you have small muscle games in one area, sense perception activities in another area, large muscles things in another area, fantasy play in another area, where the children can kind of go to the things that they're interested in. They'll have all of these choices. And it's also gives you a break as a caregiver, because you're not always in charge of orchestration. You're kind of in charge of seeing what's going on, dropping in, and helping with things.
What did you find? Looks like a big doll.
When setting up choices for young children, it always helps to make sure the choices stand out. Put only a few things on a shelf and use natural wood or shelves painted in light tones so that they show off the materials well. This makes it easier for even the very young to find them and focus on the choice. For example, pillows, mattresses, and soft lighting get the message across: this is a place I can come to for a break.
This is a fundamental element of a well-designed environment, the need for privacy, that even when group sizes are appropriate, children in general aren't meant to be in a group of 8, 10 hours a day. So how do you create, using these nook areas and tunnels or canopy spaces, so that children can feel like they're going into a space, being able to see the full group of their peers and caregivers, but feel separate? My experience is that much of the aggressiveness, much of the breakdowns that occur in group care have to do with children feeling socially overwhelmed. So having retreat spaces is a critical part of a well-designed space.
Young children also want opportunities to play together. A caregiver can do a lot with the environment to make peer play possible.
Hi, Michael. Hi, Michael.
What we're hoping for is that the child can find out from their early experiences what their preferences are. And the way that they do that is by going into the environment and exploring. And maybe they really do like to spend more time in the dress-up corner. Or there's a time of day when they need to be alone and they desperately need to go over to some quiet area. You want to have those things for them. It allows them to not only know what they like, but also to know what they don't like.
So I do love that video. And you can see that in the classroom they had places to climb. They offer the children lots of choices. I love how they talked about, sometimes kids need to be alone. And I think that's really powerful that, it's hard for me sometimes to, imagine if you had to be with the same group of 8 people for 8 hours a day, right? So yeah, great video. PITC is amazing. So this is the end. In the next video, next lecture, we're going to be talking about curriculum. So bye, everyone.